Yeah. Uh, the thing about the Market Theatre was that it was claimed space. So people felt, each individual felt that she or he, they, whatever you want to call the person, owned a piece of it. It was the people's theatre in the sense that this clique, and it was called a clique, and many people said very, very, very bad things about the fact that it was owned by a clique, or intellectually owned by a clique, was at play over there. And so it was a golden age for those people. And that's not a racialized thing, because it was integrated. You know, John Ledwaba is no longer alive, but there are other people around, and there was the Junction Avenue Theatre Company that were doing very well. Arthur Malepa, Romulau Machene, you know, those were people who were at home over there, and people who'd been in the Fugard plays, you know, Fugard himself. They were coming and going. It was its own star system. It was there. You could go, but there was a line. There was a line. You know what I mean? And the line was, you were either in or out. You know, or you were either, you know, you could walk up to, okay, so, you know, you could walk up to the people, the Janice Honeymans or the Robert Whiteheads or the Vanessa Cooks or those people, and you could be part of their drinking group, or, you know, or you could sit down with the people of color and converse about the evil system, and you would be part of the discussion and the conversation. You could buy get a drink on a tab, you know, just say you will, or get somebody to buy you a drink, make gay old jokes, pick someone up, you know what I mean? Who knows? Have a little scene in the bathroom, take a stroll on the railway line. It was quite safe in Newtown at that stage. I mean, you know, don't know how far you'd go, but you could do, you know. So then there were people who would come in from the yes, although I'd come from this thing, yeah. I mean, but I'd come from, you know, yeah.
But the point you got to just now is saying actually the rehearsal room was interesting. Yes?
Well, it was because of who, yeah.
Just go back and get to the beginning where you're asked into the space and why it's interesting.
Okay, so Barney, well, look, the thing was that Barney invited all the sort of like factions in the town. And Possession Arts was one of them, and I assume, well, Weekend Theatre may have still been going in some way. Maybe Andrew and I were there, and my friend Giulio Beccari, who's a cinematographer who was involved very heavily in that, and we were invited. I can't put a fucking year to this, actually, but at some stage, after the Market Warehouse was sort of like had its day, I think we were invited in, and Barney and Manny said, or Barney said, this is an open space. Do what you want to in it. And I always tell the story. I have told the story about John Nankin, who turned on Barney and said to him, is this space an open space, or is this Barney's open space? And we need to know from now on, like, what is going on over here, because if this is Barney's open space, we want fuck all to do with it, basically. But if this is an open space, we want something to do with it. It was a room. I mean, the room was probably 4 meters by 4 meters, 4 or 5 meters, a tiny room. He just said, do what the fuck you want in it. Come here, do what you want. And they did. Great plays were made there. I mean, some really, really good, like, out there work was made there. I mean, it was for a small time, you know, a place where you went, you sat on the ground and people went mad in front of you, you know. And so that was the rehearsal room. And it is in the book, Born in the RSA, I think, and other plays. It is our collective, you know, our child, mine and Barney's child. And it is a remarkable play in the sense that Barney did what he did so beautifully, was weave those beautiful plots together, you know, sew them together in a way and make everybody's journey resolved by the end of the play. Even if they're not resolved, they're resolved. They're resolved in their unresolvedness. You know, it's the way he worked. You know, and we had many discussions about what it meant, light-hearted discussions about why we felt that the Jewish community should be a left-wing community. And of course, his great friend was Joe Slovo, and Ruth First, Joe Slovo's late wife. So there was a sort of a clear through line. Joe Slovo, who was born in Lithuania, and there was a clear line of discussion about how the sort of the culture of the elders, or the culture of the people who'd come to this country was sort of like how the culture we were experiencing was a natural progression of that left-wing Jewish culture. There was no doubt about it. We prided ourselves in the fact that all we were really doing, I and my sort of so-called faux radicalism, where nothing was radical enough for me, and Barney in his telling of the deep humanist stories, it was just a natural progression from what our Jewish humanism had given us, basically, and that was the Yiddish language, which is apart from the sort of Zionistic Hebrew fervor. In other words, if anything, you know what I mean, even though he went there, and even though, you know, I had gone there in my childhood, we understood that there was a difference. There was Yiddish culture and Zionist culture, two different things. Boom, Yiddishkeit, as they call it, you know what I mean, and Zionism. And that we were from the left-wing tendency, and we spoke endlessly, ad nauseum about what we knew and understood, and it could go on and on and on for days, and carry on telephone calls. You know, when Barney had his grass and thought of something funny and a point of reference, he would phone and at like 11 o'clock at night, maybe even, and tell me he just remembered a joke that his mom told him when she was 13, and we had that discourse going. And I was...
Don't worry about it, just say it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was a person living in there. You know, I mean, with Barney, the outside was a complete reflection of the inside. You know, in other words, what you saw was what you got. But nobody fucking knew what they got, because he was so adamant that he would never give it to you straight in his practice in the theatre. He would spend a lot of time befuddling you on purpose, not leading you as a character down the garden path to a place where he didn't want you, but by placing those obstacles in your way, he would watch you overcoming those obstacles on the road to your character construction. And those obstacles were the plot points from which he'd make the play.